I'm Chef Frank, this is Protocooks, and today we're making potato croquettes. Potato croquettes always stick out of my memory as a special occasion food. It takes a little work to make them, so they would come out during special occasions. And I remember my grandmother would make two different versions. One with mozzarella in the center, so it got that nice mozzarella pull, and one with no mozzarella. And you always wanted to get the ones with the mozzarella cheese in the center. This recipe isn't her exact recipe, it's just my take on her recipe, and I hope that I do it justice. For my croquettes, this is what you're gonna need. Olive oil, eggs, grated cheese, potatoes, flour, mozzarella cheese, breadcrumbs, and oil for frying. First ingredient I want to talk about are the potatoes. You can't have potato croquettes without potatoes. I like to use a yellow potato, a waxy potato, like a Yukon Gold. Some people like russets, they're light and fluffy. I like these because they're a little more dense, they have a little more flavor, it's a little richer. So that's why I prefer these as opposed to a russet. Next ingredients I want to talk about are the cheeses that we use. I like to use a low moisture mozzarella, whole milk. I don't really like using fresh mozzarella for this because there's a ton of moisture in it and it can make the inside of your croquette soggy. The other cheese I want to talk about is grated cheese. These croquettes have a lot of grated cheese in them. I like pecorino Romano. You can use whatever grating cheese you like, but just buy quality stuff, right? If it's sitting on a shelf and it's not in the refrigerator, chances are it's not a great grated cheese. A great grated cheese. Buy good cheese. All right, I'm gonna spare you peeling all the potatoes. I'm making a large batch of these, but I wanna show you how I peel potatoes and how I'm gonna process them. With potatoes, I like to peel the tops off the potato, peel the bottom off the potato. If there's any blemishes, that's what this little thing is for. You get the blemishes out, and then you just kind of connect the top and the bottom, and it's a really quick way to peel potatoes. I consistently and constantly teach people how to do it like this, but people just like to go like this. Drives me nuts. Peel potatoes quickly and efficiently. Now, if the potatoes are really big, I have this one. It's not huge, but these are small. I'll leave these whole, and then this I'll cut in half, and it goes right into my pot. I'm not worried about washing them now. I'll wash them before I put them on the stove. So this is my last potato. I'm making a large batch. The recipe in the description will be for a much smaller batch. I'm making it for a crowd. So I'm gonna go wash these off in the sink, and then we'll put them on the stove. The potatoes are peeled and washed. They're covered with water. I'm gonna season them up. I like to cook my potatoes with some salt so the seasoning gets into the potatoes. Okay, let's go throw the potatoes on the stove. I'm gonna put the potatoes on high, let them come to a boil, then lower to a simmer. If they boil the whole time, the potatoes will fall apart, and I don't want it to fall apart. I want it to be cooked through and still have some texture to them. All right, the water is boiling. I'm gonna lower to a simmer, and we'll cook until the potatoes are tender. The potatoes are done, and this is how I determine it. I take a knife, I slip it in, and the potatoes slip off really easy, right? If the potato sticks on the knife, they need to cook a little more. I don't want these falling apart. I'm gonna strain these and bring them back over to the table. Potatoes are cooked and strained. I like to use a ricer. A ricer will make the potatoes uniform. If all you have is a masher, use a masher, that's fine, but I think the ricer works best. This is what my grandmother used to use, not this one, she had her own. But I think that you get a better texture if you use this. You should rice your potatoes while they're hot. You don't want these to cool down and then try and rice them. It's kind of a nightmare. So just get them in there and get them all nice and smooth. My parents were telling me that my grandmother used to put the potatoes in the pot with the skins on, and then she would peel them after they were cooked. I can only think the reason for that is that maybe they held some of the water out and the potatoes didn't get watered down. But I choose to peel them. These are waxy potatoes. They don't soak up a lot of water. All right, last potato. They're riced, nice and smooth. Let's clear this off and I'll show you what I'm gonna do to these. My potatoes are riced, they're still warm. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna season them up with some salt and black pepper. I like a generous amount of black pepper. A nice hit of salt. I'm gonna put a couple of eggs in there. Not a lot. You don't want to have a ton of eggs in there. You just want it to help bind. And I'm gonna put a fair amount of cheese in. And again, I'm using pecorino Romano. And not something my grandmother would have done, but I want a little extra virgin olive oil in here. I like the flavor, so let's give it a mix. Nice and cheesy, right? You don't want to put this into a mixer or else it's going to get really sticky. I'm going to mix it really well, set it aside so that it's cool enough to work with. Yeah, look at that. Nice mixture there. I want to show you how to cut the mozzarella. I'm going to cut these into sticks so that when I form the croquettes, there'll be a nice little chunk of mozzarella in the center. So just cut it into like quarters. I like a nice big chunk of mozzarella in the center. And you'll see what I mean in a minute or two when we put these together. The potato mixture is cooled off and you want it to be cool enough so that you can handle it. All right, let's go. You want to get a nice spoonful, right? You get a piece of mozzarella, stuff it in the middle, and then seal it around the mozzarella. Make sure there's no holes. And I make these into kind of nice, actually they look like potatoes, right? But I want the mozzarella to be sealed in there really good. Onto the tray. Nice spoonful. You don't want to go too crazy. Flatten it out. Nice piece of mozzarella in the middle. Close it over the mozzarella. Right? And then just shape them kind of into like, I don't know. That's kind of the size and shape I remember. They might have been a little smaller. Flatten it out. Nice chunk of mozzarella in the middle. Fold it over. Seal it up real good. And then just shape them into, I guess logs. I don't know. Croquette shape? Is that a croquette shape? I don't know. That's kind of familiar to me. It feels familiar. So the croquettes are made, they're still a little warm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them in the fridge until they're nice and cold, and then I'm going to bread them. If you try and bread them now, it's going to be a real problem. You want the potatoes to kind of really cool off and solidify around that cheese. The croquettes have chilled. They're nice and firm. Now, my grandmother used to put these just in breadcrumbs and then fry them. I'm going to do it a little different. I'm going to do a standard breading procedure. Flour, then eggs, then breadcrumbs. This gives you a firmer outside shell, and the mozzarella is less likely to kind of spill out when you fry them. So let's get breading. With a standard breading procedure, it's always going to be flour, eggs, and breadcrumbs. And you always want to have one dry hand, one wet hand. You don't want to have both hands going into each ingredient or else you get really fat fingers. So my dry hand will be my right. So I can sprinkle, once there's flour on this, it's dry. Give it a shake off, put it into my eggs, right? We don't want to have too much flour on this, right? So my wet hand goes into the eggs. Right, turn these over, make sure we get them nice and coated with the egg. Then it goes into the breadcrumbs, dry over the top again. Make sure you get all sides. Breadcrumbs, flour, eggs, breadcrumbs. One wet hand, one dry hand. We don't want a very thick coating on these either, right? It's still a nice thin coating, but it'll just hold together a little bit better than just plain breadcrumbs. The breadcrumbs I'm using are unseasoned. I don't like the Italian seasoned breadcrumbs. I like them plain. If I'm going to put seasoning in breadcrumbs, I'm not going to trust the breadcrumb company. I'm going to do it myself. It's time to fry the croquettes. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to talk about before we fry. Is that I want my oil to be at about 325. Because I want these to get brown on the outside, but also melt that mozzarella on the inside. If the oil is too hot, you're going to have cold mozzarella in the middle, and it's going to be really dark on the outside. So I go for about 325. You might have to go a little lower, but I really want them to heat all the way through so the mozzarella gets kind of that nice kind of stringy pull to it. So 325 works good. I have vegetable oil. If you want to use fancy oil, that's up to you. I have a spatula, and I'm just going to lower these in. Right? If they need a little bit of reshaping, just give them a little love and reshape. Be careful, you don't have to overload your pan. I could probably fit them all without overloading. I have a plate with a paper towel to drain these on. And I'm just going to let them bubble away happily. When you see bubbles when you're frying, it's a good thing. Bubbles mean that the liquid or the water in the product is cooking out and the oil is not getting in and making your like croquettes greasy. So you want to make sure that when you put these into the oil, they start to bubble right away. If there's no movement in the oil, they're going to be soggy and super greasy, but I think we're pretty good right now. When it comes to frying, you always have to adjust your heat. I like to turn these. Just turn them so that we get nice even browning. I'm using this, it's called a fish spatula. To me, this is a really great spatula to use because it has big holes so it doesn't keep the oil in. It kind of drains the oil off really well. I'm just gonna let these fry till they're nice and golden brown and hot in the center. If you feel like they're getting too dark too fast, lower your temperature. So these are looking good. It's been about 5 minutes and we can take them out and let them drain on our plate. All right, look at that. Shut your heat off. Let's plate them up and give them a taste. Finally, it's my favorite time to taste. Hashtag time to taste. Can we get that going? Can we please get that going? Triple T with finger guns. Time to taste. It looks good. It's golden brown. I can smell the cheese. Let's just break it open and see what the center looks like. Look at that. So the mozzarella is melted. I think I could probably get a little more melty, but look at that. I like to get a little bit of that cheese pull there. This kind of reminds me of my grandmother's, but it's not the same. Let me give it a taste. Oh, well, there's a bit of a cheese pull there. I'll take that. I'll take it. Ready? So it's definitely familiar. It's not the same as my grandmother's. There's definitely a little bit of a chef spin on it, but it's absolutely delicious. The mozzarella is nice and melted. You can taste that pecorino in the potatoes. The potatoes are kind of fluffy with a little bit of density to them. It is delicious, if I don't say so myself. One of the things I love about the potato croquettes is that you can make them and fry them a day ahead and then just heat them up in the oven. I actually think they're a little better that way. I don't mind if they're not super crispy, as long as that mozzarella in the center is nice and stretchy. You serve this to someone, you're telling them that you love them, right? You can't get away from it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give us a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. We have merch in the description down below. We have a P.O. box down there as well. I want to thank my Patreon patrons for supporting us. Thank you so much. And that's it. That is my potato croquettes. I'm Chef Frank. This is Proto Cooks. Have a good one.